All right, so I have finally found my favorite way to prepare panels and my favorite medium. All right, so if you guys have been watching this channel for a while, you know that I like to paint on Masonite, and I use whiteboard, which is basically 1/8" Masonite that's been sealed on one side with paint for use with dry erase markers. And so I sand and prime or gesso this side here, the raw side, and then do my oil painting on this side here as well. It's nice to have the back coated with paint. It prevents warping, also gives like a nice clean finish to the framed painting, and allows me to write on the back the title, the date, my name, etc. But what I've been kind of experimenting with is trying to find the best way of preparing this raw surface for oil painting. And so I have done 3 different things, and you may have seen these videos. One is I used acrylic matte medium to attach some really nice linen to the panel, and I used Classen's 15 double oil primed linen, very nice stuff. And then I also experimented with using Zinsser oil primer that's used for houses. That's something that I saw various painters do on other YouTube videos, so I gave that a try. And then there is the method that I've been using for probably 1.5 years now, which is 3 coats of acrylic gesso and then putting some 4F pumice, which is a very fine powder, which gives that final coat some grit, some tooth, and absorbency. And what I found is that is actually my favorite way to prepare the panels after experimenting. The linen I like okay, it's kind of nice to paint on, but I don't feel like it shows the brushwork as well, and also the colors aren't as present or vibrant. Something about having the paint sitting right on the surface, like when you prime with either the oil primer or the gesso, the paint tends to sit right up on the surface. And I prefer the gesso with the pumice in it over the oil primer, simply because the paint goes on better. I like the absorbent quality and the tooth. I'm able to scrub in with thin paint and get it to like, you can kind of apply washes and it'll soak in a little bit. Whereas with the oil primer, it does tend to be a little bit slick. The oil primer is better than acrylic gesso without pumice, but once you put the pumice in, to me, that's just the best. You could experiment with putting pumice in oil primer and maybe you'd get good results. But to me also, acrylic primer is easier to use because it's water cleanup. It doesn't have that strong smell that the oil paint has. So overall, I just think that the acrylic primer with the pumice mixed in is the ultimate. And then I have a certain medium that I like to use with that. So I have my favorite way to prepare panels and my favorite medium, and I'm going to share both of those in this video. So I've got a bunch of 20 by 20 panels that I've just cut out, and I've put 2 coats of gesso on them, and now I am going to mix up a batch with pumice. So I'm going to show you how I do that, and we're going to get started. All right, so I'm using Utrecht's professional grade acrylic gesso. I'm putting it into like an old plastic container here. All right, and I'm putting in about a cup or so. All right, so next step is to mix in some pumice. I don't know if you can see this, but this is just like a powder. All right, I'm not super exact, but I'm using about like, I'm using 2 tablespoons. They're not quite heaping, but they're not level either. All right, so it's pretty thick. I'm gonna mix in a little water. Okay, so I want to thin it enough so that I can use a roller. Okay, so I've got 2 coats of gesso already on here. The first coat I rolled out and brushed in this direction. Second coat I rolled and then brushed in that direction. And now I'm going to roll out and brush in this direction with the final coat, which has the pumice in it. And the roller allows me to put this, quite a bit of gesso on without the gesso drying. If I tried to brush it on, it would start getting thick and difficult to brush out. So this puts a lot of gesso on the panel quickly, and then I can just go and and then, you know, sort of brush out the roller marks. I don't know, some people might like the roller marks, but it's kind of a stippled effect, which I'm not. I like the panel to be smooth. There are always a few little imperfections, like little bits of dry paint that I remove. All right, so the panels will be dry in a couple hours. I'm actually gonna paint on one later this afternoon, but I am out of my favorite medium, and so I'm gonna show you guys what I do right now. As you guys know, I use Liquin a lot when I'm painting outdoors, but it's not my favorite medium. My favorite medium is a mixture of 1 part mineral spirits, 2 parts linseed oil, 1 part stand oil. The linseed oil and stand oil is just from Utrecht, and then I'm using Gamsol from Gamlin for my mineral spirits. And to measure out the ingredients, I just use this little scooper that I got out of the laundry detergent. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the stand oil, and this is basically just thickened linseed oil, and it's kind of has the consistency of honey. It's really thick. So I'm using 1 part stand oil. And I'll just pour it into my container here. And I'm gonna use 2 parts linseed oil, so here's 1. And 1 more. And then finally 1 part mineral spirits. Okay, and I use the end of a paintbrush just to mix it up, make sure all the stand oil is mixed in. Because it's kind of thick, it tends to require a bit of mixing to make sure it's mixed all the way through. All right, so let me show you guys what the medium looks like when it's on the panel. All right, so here's a painting I did a few days ago. This is a 20 by 20, and this is on a panel that's been gessoed and has pumice in it, just like I showed you. Let me show you up close some of the brush work. And I feel like the colors are really vibrant. Here is a panel that has, I don't know if you can see the texture, there's actually, there's linen on there. But I just feel like the edges, it's kind of just softer than this here. This seems like sharper and more saturated. The colors seem more saturated. So I prefer the gessoed panel with pumice over the canvas, you know, the panel that has canvas or linen attached to it. Although it's not bad. I mean, it looks okay. It's just, I like this look better. All right, so I just want to share that info with you guys because I finally decided on my favorite way to prepare a panel and my favorite medium. The others are fine, like I said, but these just really work for me right now. It's the end of the month, so I want to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters. Much appreciated. If you want to help to pitch in to support the channel, there's a link to my Patreon down below. And other than that, thanks for hanging out, guys. I will see you in the next video.